Greetings and bienvenue, midnight crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
I went hiking with a friend in Central Florida this one time and had a surreal experience that made this dude not ever want to hike with me again. Be me, 25. Meet up with an outdoor bro. Call him Brad. Brad's one of those minimalist kinda guys. Brings an alpaca blanket, some beers, weed, first aid, small knife, the usual. I have a cookery, hammock, water bladder, canteen, also first aid, some beers, weed, and a little more kit that's irrelevant. Brad has some years on me, but we vibe pretty well. He's a free spirit and I'm some sort of abominable human. People like Brad are cool. Most of the time I hike alone on purpose, never any spoops except one time where I crossed paths with a pig. This time we're somewhere southeast of Orlando. Terrain is mixed. Inside the tree line is solid ground with stable footing. Open ground is grass, bog. Trees grow in patches, so have to cross bog to get to the next tree line. Not too bad, I have had worse times in similar environments. No fucking everywhere. Don the mosquito nets. Takes half hour to cross maybe 20 yards. Get to tree line with Brad and decide to go to the center and set up a temp camp and chill out. We get to the center and drop our packs to begin the good work. Some guy yells at us. Hey. Power spin toward the voice. Can't see shit other than brush and oaks. Brad speaks out in a I don't give a F tone.
Who's there?
Brad's a big dude, like 6'7", plays basketball, works as one of those big nurses in hospitals that do the heavy lifting. Real gentle soul though. Engage hypervigilance from abusive upbringing. Listen to every noise and artistically scan with peripheral vision. Absolutely still. Voice responds.
Just wanted to let you guys know I'm out here too.
What a nice guy.
Brad invites him over.
Nah, that's alright, brother. I've got a nice thing set up over. You wanna come check it out?
By this point I'm sketched. People do not get the drop on me in a woods. I avoid them all the time. I figured this guy was living out here and we pissed him off. I look at Brad. Fuck it. Let's go. Go with Brad into the brush. Walk through thicket of palmetto, small oaks, weird vines, and crowded pines. Make it to a clearing.
Hey.
All the debris in a 10 feet diameter is gone, just bare ground. Dude in a coat with a big hat is sitting on the other side of cleared ground. Brad says what the fuck? Heart is pounding. Feel evil or fear. Can't rationalize this dude just sitting out here with no camp. He's just staring at the ground, the edge of his hat blocking his face. He looks up and sort of stretches. Like he stretched as anyone else would, but he didn't stand up while doing so and we get a whole view of this dude's body. It's covered in paint or something like it. His entire face was oily, shiny black and there was white and red paint all over him in designs. He was wearing this really long coat that was made of jute or burlap, something cheap, and it was gross. His eyes were so alive, like he was absolutely thrilled we were there, looking between the both of us in excitement. Raises a gourd in our direction. There's a cork in it and it has white designs painted on it.
You guys want some juice?
No thanks, guy. His face doesn't change.
How about this juice?
He holds up another gourd in his other hand. Ask him what kind of juice it is.
Magic juice.
Oh okay. PNG. Brad asks where he got all the gourds from. I look up, realize my awareness is shit. Gourds hanging in all the tree and shrubs. Some are birdhouses, some have corks, others are broken, some rotting. All have white painted designs on them. I become nope. Rar. The guy is just looking at us and holding two gourds up. We both decline and ask him what's up, if he's alright or injured. He keeps asking us if we want some juice and we keep declining. trying to figure if we should and set up elsewhere or head back to the cars and call somebody, and he freaks out, throwing like a temper tantrum, slamming one of the gourds into the ground where it just indented into the sand. He started to rock his shoulders where he sat, and I noticed he had ropes wrapping around him and his coat real tight, and behind him was all the debris that had been on the ground piled in a massive mound, and he was sitting right in front, almost in it. I asked him if he was stuck, and he started crying and waving his head back and forth, asking us why we didn't want any juice in this dejected voice. I asked, "Are you alright?" and he said he wanted his gourd back and that he couldn't reach it. Brad asked why he couldn't reach it, and the man made a high-pitched squeal before lowering his head and sobbing, like ugly sobbing. Brad said fuck it again that day, picked up the gourd and went to the man. Bad decision on Brad's part. When Brad got close enough to the dude, he said, "Here's your gourd," and the dude grabbed Brad's arm and started pulling on him, screaming,
Drink it. Come on, drink it.
He couldn't pull Brad, but Brad was having a hard time getting away and yelled that the guy was tied to something and didn't want to hurt him. At no point in this moment was my giant friend in danger, I think, but I thought the opposite at the time. So I run up and fucking kick this guy in the chest, and he's as solid as a rock. He lets go of Brad and grabs my legs, knocking me on my back. I remember falling back in slow-mo, watching his face absolutely light up, with the biggest, whitest smile I had ever seen and eyes to match. I got a good look at his body paint. It was these weird white lines swirling around in curves, these red semi and quarter circles. The white paint was similar to what was on the gourds. He pulls my ass right up against whatever thing he's sitting on and pins my thighs to it with his legs. Dude smelled like ass. He was looking at me with a fever or something. It bothered me, and he had me. I thought Brad had died and I was about to get fucked. Crack. Brad beamed this dude in the head with a full gourd, pulled me away, and then fell over. He kept saying he just had to calm down and breathe, calm down and breathe. Over and over. I was trying to help him chill out while also gathering myself, and Gourdbro starts fucking yelling at us about the goddamn juice again. Like he's so goddamn frustrated about it, and whatever the fuck he's tied to. Like he keeps trying to get up, but he's not going anywhere, stomping his feet and slapping his legs. Absolute toddler fit. I got up and went around him and jumped back when he tried to grab at me. I got behind him and the pile, and the rope was coming out of the pile. I started moving the stuff out of the way, and dude just started roaring like the devil.
Get away from there.
Scared. My bowels empty right there. I brushed enough to see a smooth black surface with those red broken circles on it. I saw the same ropes coming out of the bottom of it as well, going up into the trees where the gourds were growing, hanging, and some more that went off under the surrounding debris when Brad yelled,
What the fuck is that?
Pointing to some kind of vines approaching at a slow, steady, straightforward path towards the center of the clearing. I had too much at that point, and I think Brad agreed because we both booked it to the sound of that guy wailing for us to come back, with the last thing I heard him yelling was,
Please.
In the loud roaring voice from before. We ran, crawled, scooted, scuttled, squatted, and moved in any other manner necessary to get through the brush, which was thicker than I remember it being. There were also gourds everywhere, but not with the white paint, but with the black and red paint. Those are what kept us moving so fast. It took way too long to get back to our gear, but it was there just as we left it. Didn't hear the man anymore. Brad later said he liked hanging out with me, but that ever since he met me, weird shit would happen too often in his life. I still don't know what he meant by that, because that was the penultimate strangest thing that has ever happened to me, and nothing like that has ever happened again. People do say that to me a lot though. I've always been called strange, and even my own parents see me in a different light than my siblings. I don't know what any of this is, I just try to accept it as it comes.
Not super creepy, but if I think about it I get uneasy. Be 12 years old in middle school. It's 2014. After school, I'd usually hang out on the left side of the building. This side is away from the main entrance/exit where everyone else was. This day though, I hung out in the hallway with my friends for a bit. Note, they leave the main doors open until a certain time after school. The hallway I was in was close enough to hear any commotion outside. Saw my other friends outside at the left side of the building through the door windows. Decided I was gonna leave through the main entrance/exit today anyways. Me and my friends were finally leaving, must have been around 3:30 or later because the doors were closed. Hardly anyone is around anymore. Walk home with some friends. Few days pass. Not even a week later I finally notice that one of my friends has missed school for a few days. Her locker is covered in cards and get well soon stuff. What the fuck? Find out in class she was hit by a car. Hit by a car right outside of the school. This happened a few days ago. The same day I was talking to my friends in the hallway and left through the main entrance. What the fuck? There was an ambulance and even the principal stayed by her to keep her calm. I clearly remember the principal staying inside the building, telling the annoying kids to leave while I was with my friends. I was in disbelief. I would have heard the ambulance, there would have been a lingering crowd. The incident happened soon enough after school that a lot of students and teachers saw it. And soon enough that the doors were still open. How the fuck did I not see or hear anything for days until now? A month later she came back, walked really stuff, but otherwise fine. I don't know if maybe I repressed it, but I clearly remember being confused once I heard about it a few days after the incident. I didn't hear about it once from anyone in between either. Middle school sucked.
I told this story in a thread I posted yesterday, but I'll post it again. Before I post my personal story, I need to fill you in on the legend. So strap yourselves in. This is the legend of the Lost Lights. It all starts off in the mid-1800s. An expeditionary force of 25 men go exploring in the mountain ranges of BC, looking for suitable places to start a mine. They hike up a mountain and camp there for the night. That night when one of them gets up to go relieve their bowels, and trips and hurts their leg in the dark. In the morning it is decided that 12 men will help the injured man down the mountain and back to civilization while the rest of them, 12, continue on ahead. So the group splits up. They hiked until the evening. One of the men noticed it had gotten considerably colder. It then started to snow slightly only minutes later. He expressed his concern that they might get snowed over in the night. The others laughed it off. They joked and teased about him being scared. As the evening turned into twilight, it got colder and colder, the snow got heavier and heavier. They had gone a ways up the mountain, so it was a difficult and deadly situation if the storm got worse. The snow showed signs of not letting up. In fact, it was surely to become a monster storm. The 12 men faced a tough situation. They needed to get back down the mountain, or else they would freeze to death. They left their tents and took what was needed. They started back down the mountain in the raging storm. They each lit their oil lamps as they headed down. Because of the blizzard that ensued, they could hardly see the light of the man in front of them. The man who had noted the snow earlier, Jacob White, had lost sight of the lanterns. In fact, all of them seemed to have. They walked around aimlessly on the mountain, calling out, trying to find each other. Just when it couldn't get any worse, the wind became even stronger. Jacob knew he had to get down the mountain or he would die there. He stopped trying to find the others and went with the slope, slowly making his way down. He managed to get down the slope and to the base. Jacob ran to find the 13 men that were headed back, to get help in rescuing his comrades. But he could not go on any further. The storm had spread to the bottom and across the valley. He found a nearby cave where he would spend the night. As the night progressed, he watched the lights of his fellow expeditionaries wander endlessly across the mountain in the hellish snowstorm. Throughout the night he watched them. The first light went out and disappeared at around midnight. Others followed in the next hours. One by one, they extinguished. Jacob hoped, prayed, that at least one light would last the night. The last one went out 3 hours after the first. All hope was lost. In the morning, when the storm cleared, Jacob headed further into the valley to find the 13 men that had gone back earlier yesterday. When he found them, there were only 2 left alive. The rest had died in the storm that swept down from the mountain and into the valley. The men and Jacob exchanged stories. The men told Jacob that they had seen the wandering lights up on the mountainside. The 2 men only found out in the morning that 11 men had died in the night from the cold. 3 weeks later, an expeditionary force of 20 men, including Jacob, returned to recover anything of those who had died in the storm. They found the remains of the 11 men in the valley easily enough. They recovered their personal effects and what little bone they could find to bring back to their families. There was not much left of them from the wildlife picking at them. The bodies of the men who died up on the mountain, however, they found none, no sign of them. Gone without a trace. They searched until dusk. Then, the air got colder. Light snow began to fall down. Just like on the night Jacob's comrades met their end. They hightailed it down the mountain and into the valley. They made it into the middle of the valley and made camp for the night. Then a storm came down from the mountain and into the valley, just like last time. Just like the night when Jacob lost his comrades. It got colder and colder in the valley, as the storm continued to barrel down from the mountain. That night, Jacob and the men saw something that they could not quite believe. They saw lights, wandering upon the blizzarding mountainside. They watched from their individual tents throughout the night, as one by one the wandering lights went out. Jacob knew that it must be the spirits of his friends. Jacob wondered why he only saw 10 lights when it was 11 of his friends that disappeared up on the mountainside. Had one survived? Could one of his friends still be alive? Somewhere, lost out there in the wilderness? Where was the lost light up on the high? Answers came in the morning. Answers of where the lost light went. When Jacob awoke in the morning, the storm had cleared. Jacob and the 9 other men stepped out of their tents. 9 other men. 10 men had died from the cold that night. They must have died one by one in the night, succumbing to the cold. One by one, the 10 men's lives, snuffed out by the cold. Snuffed out like the 10 lights up on the mountainside. And now, it is time to share my personal experience with the lost lights. Be me. 35. Have 3 teenage boys. Decide to go hiking with my sons, my buddy, and his 2 sons. We drive out to the edge of the wilderness at 4 a.m., park the car and start hiking at 4:30. We hike all day, only stopping at noon shortly for a quick lunch. We are walking at a decent pace. We reach the middle of a valley in the evening. We decide to camp there for the night. We ate a quick dinner and everyone went to sleep pretty quick after that from being tired from the hiking. Everyone went to bed but me. I decided to stay up and drink some beers and chilling in a fold-up chair I bought. I sat there staring at the sun that just set behind the mountain range. It got pretty cold after the sunset. Put on my jacket. Then, the fireflies came out. They danced slowly across the shape of the mountain. These fireflies were pretty weird. They didn't leave the shape of the mountain, and they didn't flash like normal fireflies. Then it hits me. Holy shit, oh fuck. JPG. Immediately get the fuck up and wake everyone. Tell them to pack their shit, and we gotta move now. My buddy asks.
What's wrong? What happened?
I saw them.
So what?
The lost lights. Buddy looks over my shoulder and sees the lights on the mountainside. He then notices how cold it has gotten. Buddy rushes to pack everything up with the kids. We hike back as fast as we can. The boys had overheard what me and my buddy were saying.
Dad, what are the lost lights? Why are we leaving right now? Can't we leave in the morning?
No, I said, and I proceeded to tell them the story of the lost lights while hiking back. At around 2:30 a.m. we managed to get back to the car, and we hightailed it out of there. I drop my buddy off and me and my kids go home. I woke up at noon, found out from the weather station there was a huge snowstorm that swept the valley we were in last night. Here comes the really scary part. I saw 7 lights up on the mountainside. There were 7 of us on the trip. And that, is my experience with the lost lights.
I haven't had many experiences, but the one I do remember was from sometime in middle school. Most of the other ones are one-offs that don't make for fun storytelling anyway. Be a middle schooler, like I said. Friends decide to explore the woods behind our suitably ghetto town. Before the woods, there's this monastery, or big church or something. Huge parking lot, lots of angel statues, and a bridge leading to a grotto. The grotto is fairly peaceful, but there's stories of people seeing weird shit there. We continue past the grotto and into the woods. We trek far enough that we eventually run into a farm. We hang out on a hill for a while. I didn't mind because my busty friend was there and I had the perfect angle. After about an hour we trek back. We hear this sound like claws on a chalkboard. I don't mean nails either. This shit was 1,000 times worse and it echoed. We hesitantly continued onward because nobody wanted to be the pussy who stepped back and, for me, tits were on the line. By God, I wouldn't let those tits see me break. We keep going until we reach this spot with a creek. Normally we just leap over it or use this log as a bridge, but the sounds seem to be coming from just ahead. Fuck it, tits. I go first into hell. As soon as I'm over the little embankment or whatever, the sound stops. I tell everyone it's safe and they follow. A few steps later, there's this circle of trees and an iron door in the middle. It wasn't here before and it looked too rusted to have been just put there. In the middle is a dead cat nailed to the face. It was positioned so that I could look through the peephole. Hear low humming from the other side of the door. Decide tits aren't worth it, and I guess everyone else did too. We sprint the fuck out of there. A few days later I brought my grandpa's trench shovel and a flashlight to see if I could find it. I felt like I was going crazy and couldn't get the humming out of my head. Never found it. Shit was gone.
Be me. Go for a trip with my friends in an abandoned Pontic village, whose residents were executed during Bulgarian occupation. Has a church. There were a lot of other people there, most of them were cousins of my friend. Otherwise, just ruins, except for the church. Have fun with the cousins, we were mocking them for being fat and all. It starts getting darker. We eat and then go to sleep. We were going to sleep inside the church. Before sleep, I get my blanket and start playing to entertain my friends. I made jokes about being God, and my friends were asking me atheist questions, why is this and that, to which I stayed purposely silent for the fun and all, huge screw up by my part. While sleeping, I had a dream. I dreamt about being in the same church at the exact same hour, getting up from my blanket, laying face down in front of the solia, part of Orthodox Church, while stretching my arms so I have a cross shape. Start praying in my dream. Hear a very loud biting coming from behind me, still dreaming. Get the fuck up and turn around. See this tall dark figure, very thin arms stretching all the way down to its feet. I'm fucking shivering. It stands still, I can notice it has some kind of hair that extends to its neck. The fear is too great. My dream continues with me waking up at the exact same spot I was sleeping. I quickly raise my head up only to see its face in front of me. This time it has huge yellow eyes, its pupils were moving all over the place. I felt like even in my dream that they were some kind of antenna that could detect all motion in their way. It says to me a roughly translation of, "Don't look in the eyes." I think I'm fainting in my dream, feel motionless and paralyzed while trying to follow its all-moving pupils. Then I woke up, for real this time, to the sound of giggling one of my friend's fat cousin was making. Really wanted to get up and hug the son of a bitch and thank him for releasing me from this nightmare. Don't do it knowing how weird that would look, plus he's a fucking slug. It's already 7 a.m., and I had no appetite for sleeping anymore. On the next day, I told my friends about the incident. Apparently my friend also experienced something odd. He was having sleep paralysis, while a demon, presumably the same creature that tortured me, grabbed his groin and assaulted him. Note that he had recently broken up with his GF at the time. They get pretty scared with the whole story. Some weeks fly by, and I have problems with getting out and I keep myself locked in my house. Another friend not present in our trip consulted me to draw the face I saw. This is what I could come up with. Still can't sleep at night, thinking about that face.
Alright Bex, I've got a hell of a story. I'm not a very supernaturally inclined person and have always shied away from anything to do with ghosts, spirits, etc., but to this day I can't really provide any rational explanation for this story. Hope you enjoy. It's all true, I'm not here to LARP. Camping on the eastern coast of Australia around Christmas a couple of years ago. In a shitty old 4WD with my parents and sister. It was getting towards evening and we'd been driving for a couple of hours with a particular destination in mind to camp for the night. We get to the turnoff for the national park where we were gonna camp. When we get to the camping ground, it is absolutely packed. Like, sardine level. I guess that because we were in that Christmas, New Year period, a lot of people were out and about. Needless to say, we were gonna need to find another place to sleep. We start to drive back along the dirt road towards the highway, a little disheartened as we didn't know any alternative spots to sleep nearby. We suddenly notice another road leading off of the one we were on. I can't remember if we noticed it on the way down, but we noticed it now. Still had probably an hour of light, so we decided we'd drive down it for a while and see if it led to anywhere we could pitch a tent. It's pretty badly maintained, full of divots and shit, but the car seems to be handling it. We followed this road for a fair while before we end up in a little clearing besides the bank of this broad tidal river. It's really, really beautiful, but there's no grass, so we decide to keep looking. We notice that there are several roads departing from the clearing, besides the one we entered it by. We pick one and start to drive down it. Night is encroaching quite rapidly. I'd say that by this point we had maybe 45 minutes of light left to find somewhere. We drive and drive, through what seems like a maze of shitty dirt roads, before we end up at this weird little car park. We seem to be at the top of some sort of hill, and a small walking track that began at the car park lead down into the forest. We decide to scout it out, hoping that we might get lucky. After about a minute or two on this track, suddenly we emerge from the trees and are looking down into this absolutely fucking picturesque camping spot. The ground where we were standing sloped gently down to form this beautiful little gully, covered with short grass. It was really small, basically the perfect size for a couple of tents. To the left, a path between some rocky ridges led directly to the beach, which can't have been more than 25 meters away. To the right, the crease of the valley continued, with the grass giving way to some low-lying trees and longer grasses. We were absolutely gobsmacked. Not 5 minutes ago we were somewhat frantically trying to find somewhere to sleep, and suddenly we found ourselves in what I would confidently call the most beautiful camping spot I've ever seen. However, something wasn't right. From the moment we came out of the tree line and first caught a sight of the spot, something felt wrong. Like really fucking wrong. This inexplicable, simmering dread had come over us all, and we all felt it. I'm not talking about feeling a bit scared. Our bodies, on a base instinctual level, were telling us to get the fuck out of this place. As we descended to the base of the valley, we noticed a black crow sitting on a lower branch of one of the trees to the right side. It was just sitting there, motionless, staring at us. That may sound cheesy or creepy, but honestly we weren't that shook by it, because Aussie crows do tend to stare. It wasn't out of the ordinary. We walked out to the beach and then back, across the grass, into the trees. We were having a bit of a look around, and we ended up finding this little pool of tepid water, we call it a billabong, with a huge shell midden beside it. For those who don't know, shell middens are piles of shells and other things created by Aboriginal people living in an area pre-colonization. Evidently, the Aboriginal people thought this spot was just as nice as we did. We continued through the trees, and before long the valley ended at the bank of the same tidal river we saw earlier. It's quite something to behold. We've managed to somewhat shake off our earlier fears and are feeling a little more lighthearted. We start back towards the grass so we can head back to the car to get our tents, etc. The crow is still sitting on the branch. We're watching it for a few seconds and then it just drops dead. It falls backwards off of the branch into the long grass. We all just look at each other, obviously horrified. All of our earlier fears have returned. Despite these obvious warning signs, we are still set on camping here, so we go up to the car and get our stuff. We're pitching the tent and Mum decides to go collect some wood for the fire. After a while we notice that she hasn't come back to the camp. Obviously, we're already on edge, so we drop what we're doing and go look for her. She's not on the beach. We begin to walk back through the trees. We find her, her eyes totally transfixed on the surface of the pool of water. We call out to her and it's like she snaps out of some weird hypnotic trance. Confusedly, she comes back to camp. We get the camp all set up. At this point we're probably 20 minutes from nightfall. Dad and I go out to the beach, just chatting or whatever. Look along the top of the ridge which looks down on the beach. There's a tall white figure standing along the top of the cliff looking down on us. We both just stare at it, terrified, trying to convince ourselves that it's just a rock or a tree trunk, or something fucking rational to explain what we're seeing. It's definitely not human, whatever the fuck it is. We go back to camp, having decided not to share what we've seen with the others. Really fucking shook by this point. The simmering dread is becoming more and more pronounced. Me and Dad sit down and decide to try and unwind for a bit to get our mind off the situation. We were both into Magic the Gathering at the time and we'd purchased a couple of booster packs earlier that day. Decide to open them and have a bit of fun. We opened probably 6 or 7 packs. Realized that without fail the rare card in each pack had been a black rare, some sort of demon, or something else relating to death. Absolutely inexplicable. It gets dark. Decide that it'd be best to just try and sleep. We all get into bed, but we're all too fucking terrified to sleep. After a while we start to drift off despite our fear, except Dad, who decides there's no way he's going to sleep and that he may as well stay up and keep an eye on things in case he needs to protect us or some shit. He's sitting on a rock outside of the tent. He sees something out of the corner of his eye. Turns quickly and finds himself face to face with a massive completely white kangaroo just staring at him. Albino kangaroos are very rare. He tells me it was at least 5 feet tall. Recall the tall white figure we saw earlier. Suddenly, an immense feeling of dread overcomes him and he decides it's time for us to get the fuck out of there. Wakes me up, I think the others were already awake. We pack up frantically and literally run out as quickly as we can. Get back to the car. It starts, thank fuck. The time is 11:02 p.m. Dad claims that he hadn't slept at all and that he'd been sitting outside for no more than an hour after we all went to bed. Somehow what he'd felt was an hour was actually about 4. We somehow managed to navigate our way out of the maze of dirt roads and get back onto the highway. Words cannot describe the weight that lifted when we drove out of that place. It honestly felt like I'd just avoided death. We were all feeling kind of giddy, reeling from what had happened. Needed a place to sleep. Dad looks on his phone and finds an overnight spot nearby. Drive down the highway till we get to the turnoff. Follow the dirt road for a couple of minutes as it winds its way into the forest. End up in this fairly run-of-the-mill camping spot, there's a couple caravans around. Quickly pitch and get into bed, feeling very relieved. Finally at peace. Hear a faint sound, barely perceivable. It slowly gets louder. Louder. The sound suddenly gets dramatically louder and we're starting to freak out again. I think it must be a plane passing really low overhead. Just when the sound gets almost unbearably loud, it passes us and begins to recede into the distance. Too exhausted to freak out, we all fall asleep. We all slept well. When we got up in the morning, the source of the previous night's sound became clear. Though we had been on the road to the campsite for several minutes, it was essentially just following the highway, and the campsite, which we thought was somewhat in the forest, actually bordered on the road. The sound we heard was a big freight truck driving down the highway, passing within 25 meters of where we were camped. After what happened that night, we did a little bit of research and asked a couple questions. Apparently, there were some Aboriginal genocides which happened within that national park. Could it be that that picturesque valley was the location of one of them? That the spirits of those dead still lingered? On top of that, my father spoke to a friend of his who has worked closely with Aboriginal people. The albino kangaroo is a powerful symbol in Aboriginal folklore, the guardian of the dead. I still think about that night a fair bit, definitely the scariest thing that has ever happened to me. Something about that truck and that sound has stuck with me. It seems really symbolic to me. We came so close to contact with something immense and powerful, but at the last minute we managed to make it out. I wonder if that truck was a message from whichever spirits we met with that night, making sure we knew just how close we were. Scary shit.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.